in part one of this debt ceiling overview, we looked at the basics of how the debt ceiling originated to place a cap on all federal debt and who owns U.S. debt, both the public holders and the agencies inside the government. Now you might be asking, how can we keep raising the debt ceiling? Who would keep loaning the government money that doesn't fully get paid back? After all, at the end of 2020, the total federal debt stood at $26.95 trillion. Well, for that answer, let's look at the biggest intergovernmental lender, Social Security. Now, generally, Social Security collects more in taxes than it pays out every year. So instead of just holding on to that money, the agency invests in U.S. treasuries. It's basically the same as an individual buying a U.S. savings bond. You might pay money to the government in exchange for a bond that one day the government will have to buy back from you. So when the day comes that Social Security doesn't intake as much as it needs, the idea is that they will redeem their treasury notes for those funds. So basically, the government has borrowed from itself and one day will have to pay back into itself. So why does Congress keep raising the debt ceiling instead of just balancing the books? Well, primarily, it's a battle of economic philosophy. There are fiscal conservatives who want the government to be small and spend as little as possible, while the more liberal and some more socialist individuals want the government to increase spending and provide more benefits than ever before, which requires more debt if, inevitably, enough taxes can't be raised to cover the cost. Now, if Congress ever couldn't agree on the terms to raise the debt ceiling, the government would, at some point, have to default on its loans, just not right away. Before anyone panics, understand that there's a long way to go before getting to that point. The government is just like any of us. If we absolutely couldn't get a loan, we'd first have to spend any cash that we have on hand. Only after that amount was exhausted, then it would be up to the Treasury Secretary to decide who of our creditors gets paid and who doesn't. Now, in the worst case scenario, Social Security payments would stop going out, government employees wouldn't get paid, along with payments for other government beneficiaries. Nationally, interest rates would rise, and internationally, the dollar's value would drop and lose its value as a world currency. But ultimately, it would be up to the Treasury Secretary to mitigate all these effects. Now, we won't get into the weeds of why the parties have been battling it out all these weeks, but it is interesting that the Democratic-led Congress does have a tool that it's just not willing to employ, called a reconciliation bill, which was instituted in the Congressional Budget Act of 1974. Now, essentially, reconciliation was created to expedite policy changes in the federal budget by bypassing the unlimited debate and amendment process that is ordinarily allowed. Unlike a standard bill, a reconciliation bill may be passed with a simple majority of 51 votes. However, we see year after year that whoever is the majority of Congress at the time isn't too keen on using reconciliation. Because with just 51 votes needed, they could pass it without any votes from the opposing party, and any negative consequences of the new budget and debt ceiling are entirely on them. Not exactly an appealing political move. But Congress really is running out of time because it looks like that ready cash the Treasury has on hand could run out sometime in October 2021. So Congress has to, and don't worry, they will, pass some sort of bill soon. The only question now is what it'll look like and who will be making concessions. This is Carly Sicali, FISM News.